Okay, Kim, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Great. And Commissioner Soter, is that you on number ending in 178?
Correct.
Great, okay. Well, so we have Mark on panel on Zoom, and if you want to join us in on Zoom, then that is fine. So we're yes, given on the governor vacancy. Okay, great, excellent. We'll kick off. Oh, no, no problem, no problem. Excellent, thank you. Okay, bye-bye. So, yeah, so let's just allow us to, we'll start. The chair is on her way. She got delayed in traffic. And we have Commissioner Soter online and Commissioner O'Leary in room, so that gives us a quorum. So
Don't someone online can be part of a quorum?
under Governor Baker's ruling,
The emergency rules are still in effect?
Yep, until July 15th.
Okay.
So we can start if you like. Yeah, so thank you very much. So we can start if you like, or we can delay a couple more minutes if you want to.
A couple more minutes isn't going to get us Joanne. She says 12:25. So
Yeah. So I'm just not sure what part of the agenda you want to tackle first.
yeah, I'm looking at it now thinking, I mean, I wouldn't want. I think the things that engage the other
Are you on? Are you on?
watershed reps. I am on, yeah.
Okay, you have a like.
I have a
bright
got a
green?
light, yeah. Okay. Green.
Yep, perfect.
Yeah, keep an eye on me because this is my fourth meeting today,
Yeah.
believe it or not. 7:30 was the first one. The last one was really tedious.
Yeah, and PAC TV has said that it's very important to keep very close to the microphones.
Yes, you mentioned it, yeah. Good afternoon. It being a 12:04, I'd like to call this meeting of the Central Plymouth County Water District Commission to order. I'm Jack O'Leary. The chair, Joanne Zygmunt, is on the phone, and so is Mark Soter, the other commissioner. So we anticipate that the chair will be here probably in about 20 minutes, but we thought we'd take care of some housekeeping items first before we engage in any in more discussions. These are Frank and Nancy. They are from Plymouth County, who provide a lot of our administrative support. Pine Dubois is very familiar to the commission. Would you folks like to introduce yourselves?
Sure. My name is Bob Kenning, the president. Can you speak at the microphone?
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm sorry, sir, your name is our IT guy is.
Green light means it's on. So you can speak.
David Anton from PAC
David Anton.
TV.
Dave, thank you.
Dave Anton from PAC TV.
Bob Kenny, president of the Pembroke Watershed Association.
Thank you, Bob.
Samantha Woods, Executive Director for the North and South Rivers Watershed Association.
And then Commissioner, we do have a number of attendees online on the Zoom, including Miss Kimberly Groth, our consultant.
Thank you. Don Barrows, I can see. Oh, and Steve Silver too. Martha Christian is on too.
I can unmute everyone so they can introduce themselves.
Yeah, let them introduce themselves.
Great. We're going to unmute the people that have joined us online. I'll introduce what we see on your name so that you can then introduce yourself. We'll start with Don Barrows. You're on mute, Don.
Sorry about that. Don Barrows, President of the Mont Ponce Watershed Association.
Great, thank you, Don. Joe Callahan,
Hi, Joe Callahan, President of the Taunton River Watershed Alliance.
thank you, Joe. We also have Steve Silver, I see.
Steve Silva, I'm the Secretary of the Taunton River Watershed Alliance.
And as I mentioned earlier, we have Commissioner Soter online, and we have Kimberly Groff online.
Thank you, Frank. The next agenda item is background on the CPCWDC and its charge. I can give you a very brief overview of the commission. It was created by the state legislature in the 1960s, and it was specifically in response to the water emergency that Brockton had at the time during a drought, where Brockton needed some additional water supplies and was looking at Monpont Pond, Furnace Pond, and other ponds outside of the city limits. And the state legislature thought that the needs of Brockton's water needed to be balanced with at that time described as the recreational uses of those water bodies. It's since evolved into not just the recreational uses, but also the ecological impacts of those water bodies. The commission was active during the late 1960s, issued a report that really wasn't acted on, and then was moribund for a number of years. And then in was it about 10, 15 years ago, Pine? 2013, not that long ago. The commission became active again due to the efforts of people like Pine and also some state legislators, and has been meeting ever since and trying to work through issues with the blue-green algae outbreaks in Monpont Pond and Brockton's use of the water and its effects on the ponds, on the residents, on the fish, and that sort of thing. And we've been taking us a little while to get on our feet, but we've got a good funding stream from the state. We've got some good commission members who are active, and we've got lots of people who help us out. And it's nice to see so many other people interested in our work. The commission covers Brockton, East Bridgewater, Halifax, Hanson, Kingston, Pembroke, Plimpton, and Whitman. And we have an advisory board with representatives from each of those communities who determine who serves as a commission member and also provides us with additional support. We've been greatly benefited by contracting with the Plymouth County itself, who provide us with support services, as you can see today with Frank and Nancy being here. We have a number of projects ongoing, which we're going to talk about later on during the meeting. The first one is the Silver Lake Water Quality Monitoring Program. I think it's probably okay if we go forward with Kimberly describing that for us, just giving us an update on that. So without the chair here. So Kimberly Groff of Groff Consulting has been assisting the commission with this project and giving some direction to our consultant. And some reports have come in, and it's an ongoing project. So Kimberly, if you could, you give us an overview of what's going on.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
A little louder would be helpful.
Okay. How's that?
That's good.
All right. And do we have the presentation?
Yes, Kim, I'm bringing it up right now.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this project today, and it's great to see so many familiar faces from the watershed groups in attendance. So I'm basically assisting the commission in serving as a liaison between the town's consultant ESS group, ensuring that the project moves ahead smoothly. And Joanne asked me to give just a 30,000 foot overview I'm not going to have the time to drill down into too much detail, but I know that you're probably more interested in the details, so I'll have some resources that you can refer to after the meeting. Next slide. So in the next 10 to 15 minutes, what I'm going to do is provide a little bit of an introduction and a background on the project, why this is so important for the commission. I'll review the project goals and objectives, the project organization, the components of the project, and timeline. And then I'll get into a little bit of detail about the sampling design and next steps. Next slide. So by way of background, and I'm sure you're all familiar with this information because you're out there collecting the data, many of the watershed groups in attendance. So Silver Lake's a public water supply, and it's a complicated system in the sense that it includes diversions from Mont Ponset and Furnace Ponds. And there are concerns over water quality and quantity in Silver Lake. Most recently, Silver Lake has been impaired for flow regime modification, but as of the approval of the 2018-2020 Mass DEP integrated list of waters, it's also been listed for fish passage barrier impairments and dissolved oxygen. So those are two new impairments that have been identified. And in addition, East and West Mont Ponset Pond, Jones River, Eel River, and Furnace Pond are all impaired for one or more causes. Next slide. And this is a pretty detailed slide, but what I want to convey in this is that these are all not only Silver Lake at the top of the list, but all the other surrounding water bodies associated with the East and West Mont Ponset Pond, including Stetson Pond and White Oak Reservoir, are impaired. There is a draft final TMDL that's been developed from that. Most of the causes of pollution are nutrient related in those systems. And then also we have the Jones River and the Eel River that are also impaired for fish passage and a variety of nutrient-related impairments. And so, you know, we've got a system where we've got a lot of impacts to not only Silver Lake, but the surrounding water bodies. Next slide. So with that background in mind, the commission set out well over a year ago, actually more like a year and a half ago, to identify how to move forward and collect data that would help inform management decisions. So the goals of the Silver Lake Water Quality Monitoring Program are to collect water quality data to help inform community management decisions, to address water quality and quantity issues in both Silver Lake and the connected water bodies. And then the second goal is to develop a baseline understanding of current water quality and to continue to develop solutions-oriented relationships with the City of Brockton Water Division and the surrounding communities. And at the bottom of this slide, there's a link to the webpage for the commission. And if you Google the commission, you'll see there's a project tab. And if you click on that project tab, there's a Silver Lake project, and all the reports and sampling plans that have been generated to date are there if you want to drill down into a little bit more detail. Next slide. So the project organization, the commission is leading the charge here and overseeing the project. They've secured the funding for it and providing advisory and oversight of the project. I'm focusing on serving as a liaison between the commission and ESS Group, who is our consultant on the project. Matt Lodwig is the project manager. He had a conflict and wasn't able to attend, but I'm happy to put you in touch with him. And then ESS Group is primarily responsible for the day-to-day management of the project, developing the plans and quality assurance project plan, collecting the data, evaluating the data, and developing a final report. In addition to ESS, we have 5 contract labs that'll be assisting in the program. Next slide. So this is again, a 30,000-foot overview. There are a lot more details that I could share, but at a very high level, the project components are developing a sampling and analysis plan. So that effort began last summer and has been completed. To develop a public participation plan. So the plan is complete and that's posted on the web page. And then to actually conduct public engagement. So there was a public process last summer in August where the draft sampling plan was discussed, and we had actually a comment period that was open through the end of September. And we did receive quite a number of comments. So all those comments have helped us shape the sampling and analysis plan and enhanced the project overall as a result of the comments. And the comments and the responses are actually in the sampling analysis plan, so you can download that from the Commission's website. We've also developed a quality assurance project plan. That plan has been reviewed by both EPA and Mass DEP and has been approved. Actually, as of yesterday, DEP approved the quality assurance project plan. So we'll be collecting the signatures and posting that final plan on the website. And then, of course, the biggest component of this project is the field data collection, which began in August of 2021 and will continue through September of 2022. And I'll get into a little bit more detail about the components of that. And then probably the most important part is after the data has been collected, to take that data, analyze it, and synthesize it into a technical memorandum. And we're expecting that that technical memorandum will be available sometime in early winter 2023. Next slide. So this slide talks about, at again, a high level, the Silver Lake project sampling design components. And there are 5 major components. First bullet is the mapping. So we've collected bathymetry, aquatic plants, and macroinvertebrate data. We've also developed a field guide for aquatic macrophytes that hasn't been posted yet, but we can make that available. The second component is the monitoring of Silver Lake itself. And that monitoring program is at a deep hole in the center of the lake and includes both discrete water quality data and data loggers. We're also monitoring for Monpont Pond and Furnace Brook and the diversions from that. And the data being collected is discrete water quality and data loggers. We're monitoring 4 different upstream and downstream tributaries to the pond. And again, that will include both discrete water quality data loggers and some stream discharge measurements. And then last, we're also have 5 different sampling locations upstream and downstream of the groundwater gradient that will look at discrete water quality. Next slide. So this is just a summary of the locations where we'll be monitoring. And as I mentioned, we have 1 deep hole location in Silver Lake, 5 different groundwater locations, 4 tributaries, and then the 2 diversions from Furnace Pond and East Monpont. Next slide. And this shows the locations of the monitoring stations. So The Silver Lake monitoring station is in the middle there in blue. The two diversions are shown in pink, one at the top, the Furnace Pond diversion. And that's great, Frank. And then at the bottom, the East Monpont diversion. The tributary sampling locations are shown in red. So the SL T1, T2, T3, and SLTD. And then the groundwater locations are at 5. They're shown in green. SLG 1, 2, 3, and 5. Next slide. And this is just a quick summary of the parameters that'll be looked at for the Silver Lake monitoring. There's also similar list of parameters for the groundwater, the tributaries, the diversions. So we have discrete water quality for all the nutrient related parameters, including total phosphorus, total soluble phosphorus, total nitrogen and the suite of nitrogen, alkalinity, chlorophyll A. We'll do phytoplankton enumeration and ID, E. coli and cyanotoxins, and those will be sent out to the lab for analysis. And then also we are collecting data logger information. Not SECUDIS isn't through a data logger, but pH, turbidity, water temperature, specific conductance, and DO will be collected. Next slide. So the next steps are to continue to review progress on the project. That'll be done during the commission meetings. And I'm in touch with Matt Ledwick at ESS periodically, just to make sure everything's moving forward as we planned. We should have some preliminary results this summer. And as I mentioned, we just got approval from Mass DEP on the QAP. We had EPA approval, so we'll be signing that and posting it. We are going to continue our field data collection through September of 2022, which will allow a full year of sampling. And then once that sampling program is complete, we'll be analyzing the data and summarizing findings. And then we anticipate circling back and reporting out on the results sometime after the technical memo is prepared, likely in the winter of 2023. Next slide. I think that was it. So if there's any questions, do we have time for a few questions?
Sure, we do. We do. Anyone have any questions? It's kind of a lot to digest in a short period of time.
Thank you. That was great. Thanks a lot for the work that's been. I have one comment on one of your slides. Not to be too picky or anything, but in the early slide when you were saying that
the Jones River sub-watershed, I think that's the South Coastal sub-watershed by title, because the Eel River does not flow out of the Jones River.
Correct. Oh, yeah, correct. Yeah.
Okay, so just as a technical thing before you start distributing that kind of stuff. But I really appreciate it. I'd also like a copy of this, if possible, of this slideshow.
Yeah, we'll be posting, as Kim stated, we do have the tab of projects under the Central Plymouth County Water.org website. And today I'll post both the PowerPoint to that, along with the other updated QUAP.
And I just, if there's any chance that you might, provide some preliminary information as you're going along, anything that you feel comfortable in sharing, would like to have that as soon as you can, basically. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Bob?
Bob Kenny, just a quick question. When you were talking about diversions, Stetson was not mentioned as a diversion. And I've read so much material in the last year that at one point I noticed that Stetson was listed as a diversion, that it's piped and that they were actually using Stetson water. Are they not doing that?
No, not to our,
Okay.
certainly not to our knowledge.
All right, then, yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Anyone online?
This is Steve Silva from the Taunton River Watershed Alliance. Can you hear me?
Go ahead, Steve.
Okay. I also manage the monitoring program that TRWA has in our watershed and in the Taunton. A question I have for Kim actually is, Kim, how dependent do you think this monitoring program will be on Brockton's water supply practices this summer, as far as, you know, how much water they're, you know, they're basically, they move around the water in the watershed by, you know, pumping it from the different sources. How dependent do you think their needs and their operations will be? How will it affect the monitoring program?
Well, the plan has been laid out to try to monitor year round and also to capture the part of the year where the diversions occur. So there's not really a linkage between directly what Brockton is doing, but hopefully what we're doing is we're collecting all these different data elements that'll help inform the overall picture of the pond, you know, both its condition and the influence of practices like the diversion, the tributaries, the groundwater, so that we have a picture of kind of everything at once. But it was not really possible to drill down. We made a strategic decision that it was better to collect a wide breadth of data than to focus only on the diversions. So we anticipate capturing that information as part of this, in addition to other information. And the condition of the pond being, I think, the most important.
I understand. Thank you, Kim. But it would be important, I would think, to make sure that this year's, say, water supply operations by the city of Brockton, insofar as how they move water around, is typical to the past and the way they think they'll be operating in the future, which could be weather dependent. And if it isn't typical of the usual situation, there might be a need to monitor in the future.
Yeah, that's a good point, Steve. We should definitely make sure that the operations that are carried out in terms of the diversions are representative of prior years. And also there's a lot of literature out there. It's been studied by Princeton Hydro of sort of what the diversions are and when they occur. So a point well taken. We will definitely make an effort to ensure that the monitoring is analyzed in the context of what was occurring in terms of the diversions this past year.
Great, thank you.
All set, Steve?
Yep.
Okay, Joe, you had a question?
Hi, Joe Callahan, Taunton River Watershed Alliance. I just wanted to ask Kim, what criteria did the consultant use to select the groundwater sample locations? They seem to be all along the shoreline.
Yes, I think they used some professional judgment in that, some knowledge about what the groundwater flow direction was. And the idea was to get a handle on how much of the surrounding land use contributes. And so they've got like sort of an upstream, what would be feeding, what shallow groundwater would be feeding the lake. and then also what would be coming off of the lake. So it was kind of like you look at the gradient and then you pick locations, and they also looked at the land use. So they wanted to try to get a clean spot, an area that might have some, nutrient related runoff associated with it. So they were trying to pick the sites to optimize like a combination of the land area and upstream, downstream.
Are any of the locations near a tributary?
I'd have to take a look at that. I don't know that off the top of my head. Can I get back to you on that?
Sure, thank you.
All set, Joe?
Yes, I'm all set, thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? Pine and Bob? One at a time?
Hi, Pine Dubois again. Kim, I don't, I certainly have been reviewing and agreeing with your analysis and where you're going, but it might, have you done any consideration of doing a deep groundwater sample? I know that there's been long-term misunderstanding about, what feeds Silver Lake. And, there are people in Brockton, for instance, who think that there's some underground stream from Canada and we'll never run out of water. And then there's some of us who think that, EPA only stopped at the Jones River because they didn't want to include Silver Lake being the northern boundary of the Plymouth Carver Aquifer. So, is there any chance at all that we could try? Because having, been around the Jones River for 45 years, Silver Lake for 45 years or so, it's got a very small watershed. And I agree with the groundwater sampling being on the North Shore mostly, because that seems to be where the shallow groundwater is, but it's not where but Silver Lake sustains itself, it seems, not from surface water discharge, but from deep water discharge. And I was just curious about that, because it would be nice, it would be good to know if we can sort of figure out whether it's a sole source aquifer contribution or some Canadian generosity.
Thanks, Pine. Well, not actually as part of this phase, for sure. It hasn't been built into this program. However, I think we're going to have a really good data set to work with that's going to help us get a pretty good picture of the condition of the pond and what might be contributing to its condition. But in any study, sometimes there's more questions that come up. So I think that once we get the data, we look at the data, we see what it's telling us, then there might be other questions like you've raised here. The deep groundwater location wasn't something that came up in the public comment on the SAP. And we did make a lot of adjustments to the sampling and analysis plan as a result of the public comment. I think it really enhanced the program because the commission decided to extend the monitoring to get a full year of sampling, which I think is going to be really valuable moving forward. So I can't really speak to the commission's budget and how much funding they might have to do ongoing monitoring after this effort, but the next step will be to look at all the data and determine what the appropriate, if additional sampling is warranted.
Thank you. Bob?
I just wanted to make you aware of the fact that we, as a watershed, are collecting and monitoring Furnace, Stetson, and Oldham, many of the same tests that you're doing. I'm not sure where you're testing Furnace exactly. It doesn't sound like you're testing from the pond, but we collect this data. It's on our website. It's readily available. If anybody wants to see it, or we can send it to somebody if they need it.
Thank you.
Yeah, Bob, I would definitely it would be great to share whatever you have or share the links. Because, as the pieces of the puzzle are being analyzed, it could be helpful to have that additional monitoring data. So I'd love to take a look at it.
Kimberly, could you comment on whether the QAPP status of our data, how that works with data from other sources?
Well, so the purpose of the QAC is to ensure that we're collecting data in a way that we can document its accuracy and precision.
Mhm.
So it's really for internal purposes. We've also gone ahead and submitted our QAP to Mass DEP. And what's great about that is Mass DEP relies very heavily on external data collection sources to perform its water quality assessments. So the fact that DEP has approved our QAP means that, you know, we're collecting data in a very rigorous manner and that they would accept our data for their own assessment purposes.
Mhm.
In terms of reviewing outside data in the context of this project, it would really be a secondary kind of reality check. So as we analyze our data, it would be helpful just to see if the data that's collected by outside data collectors, you know, corroborates what we're seeing. I think that would be very, very useful. And I'm not sure if you have a QAP in place. So that would be the
Yes.
first question.
You do, good. Oh, good, okay. So.
Yeah, but so it's helpful just, you know, especially where nutrients are involved. I'm sure you're all aware there's no nutrient criteria for Silver Lake. And what DEP relies on is a weight of evidence approach when they're analyzing water bodies that are impacted by nutrients. So they look at all the different indicators, dissolved oxygen, pH. They look at chlorophyll A, and of course the levels of nutrients. And so in their practice for assessment, they look at this in a weight of evidence. We would be relying on many of the targets that DEP has developed as part of their, they call it a comprehensive assessment and listing methodology. When we get to the stage of the project where we're interpreting what the data is telling us. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you very much. Is there any other discussion with regard to the Silver Lake monitoring project? And sir, would you like to introduce yourself?
Peter Baird.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Thank you, sure.
Hi, I'm Peter Baird, Kingston resident and board member on the Johns River Watershed Association.
Great, thank you. Welcome. Feel free to join in the discussion. All right, no thoughts on the Silver Lake project. Pine, you got another one? Go right ahead.
Well, it's one of those thorns in the side kind of thing. I'm just
Stay there
wondering
if you want.
I'm just wondering if there's any effort to evaluate the impact of the solar bees. I've complained many times, I will say, to DEP, and I'm told that a permit was issued by the Pembroke Harbor Master. A Chapter 91 permit was issued by the Pembroke Harbor Master.
Wow.
So there's 4 solar bees. They were blown around the lake again this past winter. I don't know if they've been hauled back into place. I would love to know what the heck they do and if there's a positive or negative impact on the lake. I know that there's supposed to be a positive impact on Brockton's intake pipe, but I don't know if there's a negative impact on the lake as a result of that. So there you go, Kim. Have fun.
That'll be part of the next investigation. Thank you, Pine. 1 o'clock, right? You gotta leave it. Oh,
No, Mark
oh,
does.
Mark, I'm sorry. I
Yes.
can't tell who texts are sometimes.
Do you want to jump to the reorganization?
I was gonna say, there's a few business things we gotta jump to because we have a commission member who has to leave at 1. So we're gonna postpone discussion on the hydraulic dredge and on the watershed organizations and go to the reorganization and the minutes. So you want to take over, Chair?
Oh, no, you can go ahead.
Every year we have to reorganize and decide who the chair is going to be of the commission. And I've served as chair for a number of years. Joanne has, and Mark has not. So do I have any nominations? Mark, I'll let you go first.
I nominate Joanne.
Nominate Jack.
Well, I'm not. What's the proper procedure in these
Yes.
circumstances? Do I get to nominate anyone?
All volunteers step forward, or the procedure is there's a nomination, then it would be a vote. There's 2 nominations on the floor.
Okay.
Unless a person chooses not to accept the nomination, which is their right
Yep.
based off of, whatever reason they may have.
Yeah. Well, I think we have to have we all have lives out. We're all volunteers and we all have lives outside of this. So I think we have to have a frank discussion about whose commitments or who can do what. And it seems like you're pretty busy right now.
I'm pretty busy. I could accept the nomination, but
Oh.
Do I just put
It says it is on. It's the green light's on.
the green lights on? Good. Okay.
Yeah.
So I could definitely accept the nomination, but I think I'd prefer to have meetings every other month to lessen the burden. But if you are more available, Jack, then I would absolutely support you as well for it.
I can, with my job, I can never tell, and I can't wait to retire and be very available. But I'm inclined to accept, if only because the project that I'm more involved in, the hydraulic dredge, is really happening now, and I
It is.
probably should be more involved in the commission if I can get away with it. So we have 2 nominees. Call for a vote. All in favor of me being the chair?
Joanne, aye.
Mark?
Mark, aye.
And I guess that carries it. Thank you.
Congratulations, Jack.
Thank you. Back again. Okay, as far as other business, while we have Mark's attention, I'd like to call for a vote on the approval of the minutes of the Tuesday, March 29th meeting. I wasn't present, so I can't vote.
Okay. I have no comments and I move to accept.
Mark?
I have
Second?
no comments and I second that.
Okay.
Yes.
Is that a second?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Joanne, aye.
Mark, aye.
Jack abstain. The minutes are approved. I think we've already taken care of the invoice approval. Should we go through the finance report right now or wait till after?
Sure, Mr. Chair.
It's quick.
Yep, we, for the finance report, we do have just ESS consulting invoices paid during March, and small interest accrual. Statement balance, $453,578.34. We do have 2 invoices that I circulated prior to. We have an invoice for ESS Group TRC for $8,004.86, and invoice for Kimberly Groff Consulting for $3,300. As I passed out email to the commissioners. So just need a motion to approve and pay those invoices.
So moved.
Mark, can I get a second?
Seconded.
All in favor?
Joanne, aye.
Mark?
Mark, aye.
Jack, aye. Thank you, Frank.
Great, thank you very much.
And do you want to, are we done with the finances now?
Yes, that's
that's all.
pretty straightforward.
Yep, it seems like it. Yep. Thank you. We have a pretty good sized balance here. I'd like to move on to one of the prior agenda items, the update on the purchase of the hydraulic dredge for use. Pine, I see you standing up. Are you ready to speak on something? Or are you just? Okay, thank you. Well, this through a hard work by everybody, we're now about to send out an invitation to bid for I guess it's called a gravel pump dredge system or a hydraulic dredge. And to give credit where credit is due, the commission was searching for things to spend our budget on besides the water quality monitoring. And the Jones River Watershed Association through Pine du Bois came up with this idea to purchase and own a hydraulic dredge for the purpose of using it to improve water circulation, both within the water bodies that this commission has jurisdiction over, and also to make it available to other entities such as all the various watershed associations that are present here. So we've gone through the effort of getting a memorandum of understanding with the Division of Inland Fisheries, correct? Marine Fisheries, thank you, who was willing to both host, maintain, and run this equipment for us because we are not, as volunteers, equipped to do so. That has been signed, so that was a great achievement, and that was everyone who helped with that the effort was appreciated. And then the next big effort was the county. Frank and Nancy put together this invitation to bid, so it's dated today, and it's going out. It's due on May 24th at 10 a.m. And this is to acquire the equipment that we will then turn over to the state agency, the Marine Fisheries Group, to host it. So we're making a lot of progress. The idea of this is that it will be a resource to basically anybody within a reasonable distance, which we haven't fully established of our area, but basically southeastern Massachusetts, and it can be used, for example, to one of the issues we have with Monpont Pond is one of the discharges is very heavily grown in with weeds, and it could be used to clear that and improve water flow to Stump Brook. There are many other circumstances around southeastern Mass, I'm sure, that people could use this to clean out a pond or a stream that's weed choked and help improve water flow, which will help with not only water quality, but habitat and recreational values. So I think that's a very brief summary of it. Joanne, do you have any more comments on it or thoughts?
No, I think that about covers it. Pine, I know that you were going to say a few words on it as well. Is there anything that you were going to say that Jack hasn't covered?
I guess just to explain it a little bit more for the other watershed associations, the idea behind it is restoration. So it's fish passage restoration. So in our case here, because I have so far in 4 decades failed to talk Brockton into removing its 38 inches of concrete from the outflowing river, Jones River. We are currently, and perhaps I can tell you this, currently working on final design and permitting for a novel fish ladder into that. And the Division of Marine Fisheries has a memorandum of understanding with the city of Brockton to insert it into the dam at the outlet of Silver Lake, which is really 1,500 feet downstream on the Jones River. So that upstream part, since the dam was built in 1905, there's 3 and 4 foot of sediment accumulated over 100 years. Because as people know that live here, most of your wind comes from the southwest, and that's where the outlet is, right? So all of that accumulation of wind, especially during lake drawdowns, is blown into what is called Forge Pond. So that's the first 1,500 feet of the Jones River. So our hope is, and we stumbled across this, and I'll give credit to Alex Mansfield rather than myself, but you know, we stumbled across this when we were working on the removal of the Elm Street Dam in terms of how to manage the 4,000 or so cubic yards of sediment that were there. This is a piece of equipment that we came across that's used in the mining industry, and it's a suction dredge. So it's not a mechanical dredge. It's a suction dredge. So typically you would use it with people in the water as in dive gear and whatnot that are actually holding a hose. And the value that I like about this is that you're not going to excavate material and put it in a truck to take somewhere. You're sucking material out, and you can literally blow it 1,000 feet to rebuild a bank or something like that, rebuild habitat, to allow, using that, we just finished the sediment analysis over there. So I may be speaking out of turn, but I believe that since there has been no industry of any sort there other than collecting iron ore out of Silver Lake, that we should have clean sediment there. We should be able to reuse it. We have high nutrients, we have high phosphorus, we have lots of dissolved oxygen problems there as a result of the stagnant issues. But our thought is to dredge a channel for the fish passage from the fish ladder to the mouth of the lake, or to the outlet of the lake. And the idea that we originally had was we could deploy this through the vocational schools to help train people in habitat restoration. DMF stepped up as the custodian. We love that idea because none of us really have expertise in this, and they love the idea because they don't have a hydro dredge. So I think that in the dreams that we all have, this is going to work very well. It's, equipment that is based on a pontoon boat. So it's a 16-foot long boat that floats on the water. It'll have a little motor, whether that motor is an electric motor or a gas motor remains to be seen. But, it's gear that's up there. Well, each project will have to buy erosion control fabric and the length of hose you might need in order to get the stuff where it's going. But it has the capacity to blow it 1,000 feet, which I think is pretty good. So hopefully, and we went with the 4-inch diameter suction because it can take up plants, it can take up rocks, it can take up a turtle, and the turtle will survive the whole process because there's no mechanical grinding stuff going on. So it's going to bear a lot of learning, but we're hopefully going to start it with this going out to bid, and the equipment maybe on our doorstep sometime this year. We'll be able to work through the winter on trying to figure out how to launch this. But in the meantime, we're going into permitting. We hope we can use it at the so-called Forge Pond and deliver some great fish passage into Silver Lake and help bring back the species that are dwindling so fast in Cape Cod Bay and elsewhere. Thanks.
Fine, thank you. Yeah, you mentioned something else that what was going to be on my mind anyways is the permitting of this equipment, because we can't just throw it into any water body and use it. It may need, among other things, Chapter 91 permits. Maybe we can just get them from the Pembroke Harbor Master, huh? What am I dealing with the DEP for in these things?
My brother from Pembroke is telling me we don't got one. So we'll have to find out from DEP where that's at. Yeah, I think that, DMF being the custodian and user, DMF obviously has an obligation to do fish restoration. I don't know what their permit requirements are. I think in many cases, where the rubber so-called hits the road is with how much sediment there is, right? So we have laws to live by. If you're moving more than a certain, like 900, I think, cubic yards, you need a 401 and a few other permits, Army Corps permit, and so on and so forth. So it is permit heavy. All of this work is permit heavy, but that can be done. You just have to fill out the paperwork.
Well, I've been in touch with a couple of the agencies, and I was hoping that we could at least get a template, if not a blanket permit, but it seems like a template's the way to go. They have difficulties issuing blanket permits for different locations. So anyway, Pine, thank you very much. Mark, did you have any thoughts on the hydro dredge?
No, you obviously have covered it, and Pine has covered it very well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone in the audience have comments, questions, thoughts, suggestions? Because this is definitely a work in progress, and we would love to have involvement in it from other groups. Samantha, thank you.
So how much capacity, like how much sediment does this thing have the capacity to remove?
Yeah.
And microphone needs to be turned on.
So there's
Oh, you.
there's no limit to how much it can do, as long as the mechanics are taken care of and and the grease is in the, in the pump and so on, and everything's working fine. The size, this particular one that we're getting would take a 4-inch rock through it. It'll take a plant root through it. It'll take all that kind of stuff through it. In addition, because of DMF, we asked, we want to put a mechanical thing on the front so that they can pull up some big, massive root balls if they run into those without clogging up the machinery, but in terms of how much actual dirt it can do as much as you have the stamina to stay and suck.
Yep. And within the permit
just-
limits too, if there's
Right,
such a
right.
limitation.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah,
permit.
and just to relate that, that permit level, that 900 cubic yards is basically, 45 triaxle dump trucks. So that's how much 900 cubic yards is. So that's quite a bit of sediment.
Yeah. But Pine, do you, I don't want to make you get up again, but just on Forge Pond, have you calculated that volume yet? Because that's pretty large.
They're working on it right now. So Gomez and Sullivan is the engineer that is working under contract with the Division of Marine Fisheries to do the final design and permitting. So they've just flagged the wetlands. They haven't quite finished the flagging. They took all the sediment samples and cores last, I want to say 10 days ago. So that'll be, we don't have the results of that yet. Once they do that and do the plan, we'll be able to quantify the amount of material and determine, what the level of permits are. They may decide that putting in the fish ladder and going, at the outlet is the place to concentrate. I don't really know. I'm not the engineer team, but we know there's plenty of sediment to move. It's just we're going to have some serious discussions with everybody. When we did the Elm Street Dam, we did the same thing. We went into Boston and had a great big, huge, confab with all of the regulatory agencies. I really think that's the way to go in terms of this, and to have them discuss what their triggers are in working with DMF, because I do think, we're not going to just go willy-nilly around sucking ponds out. This thing, I believe, will be dedicated to, fish passage and restoration efforts.
Right. Frank?
Yes, Chair. I just want to also add a few things. This IFB invitation for bid will be officially released tomorrow, advertised in the newspaper and on Combis, and we'll go out to bid, have bids back, as you stated, on the 24th, and be ready for approval by the commissioners at your next meeting. Furthermore, the county does have a mechanical dredge. It's a large tractor mechanical dredge unit, John Deere 210 long reach, that we've had tremendous success utilizing down in Falmouth, clearing a lot of sediment from different pond entrance onto the ocean. So again, allowing the fish passage from the ocean and allowing them to spawn into the Falmouth ponds like Great Pond and Salt Pond. And that is available at a very, very low rate to any organization in Plymouth County. And we create an intermunicipal agreement with the Board of Selectmen. And then for literally only $1,400 a week for this major piece of equipment, you're able to utilize the mechanical dredge if the hydraulic dredge is too small for a project.
Thank you. Is that something we could reference on our website? So if people were interested in this, they would see that as well.
Yeah, I have a PowerPoint that I will post under the dredge
Topic, yeah.
tab.
Yeah, that'd be
on the
great.
CPCWDC.
Yep, and that's available.
And it has all my contact information so that you can see the jobs. We've got a number of press releases, comments. Mark Perzik is the environmental engineer down in Falmouth.
Mhm.
We work closely. We've also done work in Harwich, Chatham, Bourne, unfortunately, just not in our county.
I was gonna say, it's
So,
Barnstable
and we
County.
keep
Getting all the-
begging, we keep begging, the environmental, officers of the local towns that we want to get the machine working there here, but
Mhm.
we haven't, between permitting and size of projects, it hasn't been able to be utilized yet.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for pointing that out. Great. Bob, go right ahead. I was going to say, I think we're going to kind of blend into the open discussion with the watershed group. So if anyone has any thoughts on this subject or anything else, let's get started with that.
The $1,400, does that come with an operator?
No, it does not. So what we've found is that DPWs, several DPWs have the staff members and the experience to be able to utilize the machine on their own staff. So basically the towns would sign would have the insurance point, for the equipment for the project. And then a DPW driver, which is already being paid for by the town, would then be utilized, again, saving money. So the Cape towns that have used it said they literally have saved tens of thousands of dollars on these projects. And it allows smaller projects, not Army Corps of Engineer projects, but smaller projects that need continuous or yearly or biannual updates and cleaning to be done at a very, very low cost.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, does anyone from the various watershed groups have any comments or thoughts about what we're doing, how we can work together, how we can put this equipment to use?
Hi, this is Steve Silva, again, from
Go
the
ahead, Steve.
Taunton River Watershed Alliance.
Yeah.
I've been talking to Bill Napolitano, who many of you know from Serped, about how we can help the Middleborough Herring Commission, because they have an issue at the dam on the Nemasket River that's very similar to what we've been talking about here, where sediment flows across the Assawamsett ponds, which are huge, builds up against the dam. The sediment has been tested; it's super clean, and they need to for the end of the summer when the herring juveniles want to go back out to sea. Sometimes they can't get to the dam if it's a drought condition and the levels in the ponds are low. So even though the dam has a channel that they would leave open for the juveniles to go downstream, if they can't get to it because of a sediment buildup, then they can't get out of the pond. They might have to overwinter, which is not a very good condition, a situation. Similarly, on the other side of the dam, there's a lot of, again, it's clean, fine sediment that's filled in there. They did do an experimental dredge project, and so Bill and I have been looking into how we could help them get a more efficient permitting arrangement in place. And so it seems like a piece of equipment like this could be ideal for them. So I'll pass this information along and appreciate this. I've learned a lot. Thank you.
Please do. That sounds like a great application for it. And definitely on the permit side, if we can all share our resources and make it get efficient, we can get more use out of it. Anyone else? The North and South Rivers are, we're going to see some use of this equipment there. You don't have to. How about
You get your steps in.
Yeah, we're We're going to buy a microphone at some point.
Yeah. Right. I'm thinking about it.
Okay.
I think I want to see the permitting process. Frankly, we're more interested in removing dams than we are in keeping them and trying to
Right.
make them work.
Yeah.
But if we can't make them,
Yep.
remove them, then maybe there will be some opportunities that we could use this to.
Yep.
We do a lot of in-stream work
Yeah.
where we're just like removing. In fact, after this, I'm going to go remove some debris in a river to make sure that the fish can bat. But it's that. So I have to think about it.
Okay.
It's clearly something for maintenance, I think.
Yeah.
And probably in the South River is someplace where we might be able to find some places that we could use it. So it's great that you have gotten this, and I look forward to seeing what the permitting pathway looks like and how much it costs.
I think Pine is the pioneer. On that. And
well, the fact that DMF is leading the charge, maybe they can, as you said, either have a template, or I don't know if they would be able to get an O&M, put it into their own O&M plans for their fish ladders somehow, so that we don't have to go through quite so much.
There's got to be a way to make it easier than piecemeal permitting for a first project. That's the issue. And
Yeah.
it's not, the law is the various laws aren't oriented towards that. That doesn't mean there can't be a way to do it.
Right.
Yeah, I always think of the old mosquito ditches too when I think of the hydro dredges. That's something that
we want to fill in the mosquito ditches.
I was going to say I wasn't sure whether it was a good idea to have them or not anymore, so I wasn't sure if that made sense.
I think the current scientific thought around that is that we should be filling in these ditches to restore the salt marsh to health.
Right.
To help them through the sea level rise that we're encountering and will encounter. So I'm not sure that's something that's not something we would support use of it. But again, I think where we have to maintain a system,
right,
because of man-made diversions or obstructions, I think that makes, this might be the one solution to help us with maintenance. And if we can get the permit so that we don't have to do it every time, so that you can come back, because you're going to have to come back and do that again. You don't think so? You haven't.
Pine, please
join me in the microphone singing.
We should all just sat at this table.
I don't really think so. I think the accumulation of sediment is because of 125 years of being dammed. Right.
Yeah. Once
the flow is reestablished. So the idea of the fish ladder we're installing, which is an innovative ladder, it'll be the first one of its kind in Massachusetts, is cut into the dam, and that will maintain the flow in the channel. So whatever sediment, wants to be in the channel is going to start going downstream. We may have issues downstream, as we do now with the trees, as you're mentioning, where there's been so much alteration of the landscape. There's a ton of work to be done in the river. In case anybody's listening that wants to get involved in it, we're going to be having a lot of work. But DMF does this too. They get into the river. They've extended the permit through the Kingston Conservation Commission to us as helping them work in the river in order to maintain fish passage. This is not so people can go kayaking up and downstream, because you don't have to clear that much for fish. It's so that the rivers don't get dammed by the logs that are getting stuck, because there's no other place for the river to go.
Right. Well done.
Thank you. The agenda item does mention the potential use of ARPA funds by us and to coordinate requests. Was there any discussion on that? I didn't come prepared to have any.
So it is my hope that the group that is here today, both online and here in the room, that we can begin. So ARPA, the American Recovery Act, is a once in a generation, once in a lifetime, once in a several generation opportunity for us to correct infrastructure problems. The thing that we've been talking today about in terms of Silver Lake is an infrastructure problem that has been here since 1900. And it needs to be, it needs to be fixed. You know, in 1898, Brockton got the right to take Silver Lake for water supply if it gave water to Whitman. They put this 38-inch dam there because they wanted to be able to take up to 2 million gallons a day. And they knew that if they raised the lake up a foot, they could use that foot of water and take care of all their needs. And that was true until the 20s. And then the Water Commission, and we have all the reports that say, we're out of water, we need to expand our water supply. And from 1920 to 1964, it was a conversation. And in 1964, it stopped being a conversation and it was an emergency because the city was on fire. We've all been there. That's why the Taunton River watershed is diverted into Silver Lake and the North and South Rivers watershed is diverted into Silver Lake. And none of that goes down the Jones River. It gets flushed into Brockton and flushed down the Taunton River. Not a good infrastructure for the future. It's Monpont Pond has cyanobacteria. God knows what Furnace Pond has. The fish can't get up these 3 river systems. We've depleted the fish stocks. We need to fix that, and we can. In Massachusetts, we can. It's a matter of will, and it's a matter of money. And in this case, I don't want to say I got the only plan, but I certainly got one. You know, we can plumb Monpont Pond to the treatment plant, stop the diversion into Silver Lake. You can take less from Monpont Pond that way, take 3 or 4 million gallons every day instead of 15 to 18 right now, and curse the cyanobacteria and the beavers too. And you can stop taking Furnace Pond because we're not taking that much anyway. And we can buy Aquaria and have Brockton actually use it, which is what it was built for in 2005. It was built for the city of Brockton in 2005. It's the only city that can use that water. It's a 20-mile pipeline to the city of Brockton that they pump water up every day. And when Brockton doesn't use it, they pump it up there, they treat it, they do all that kind of, and then they flush it down the river. How brilliant is that?
So Pine, I think what you're saying is that there's definitely a need to investigate sustainable and resilient supply options.
I think investigate and engineer, because you need engineering in order to tear up Route 36 for the 2.3 miles it would take you to get to the Brockton treatment plant. You need engineering to tell Brockton you can take 4 million to 5 million gallons a day out of Aquaria, or guess what? You could take more than that if you could build the infrastructure more. Or you could say to, as I've said to this group before, and the South Shore Chamber, let's deal with the South Naval Air Station, or whatever the heck it's called now, in terms of what they need. Because if the MWRA was brought to help that development down there, it could also feed as a supplemental supply to Brockton. But it takes all of our watershed associations and Metro South as well as Metro West to get together on the same page, because we're talking, you know, if not $100 million, $200 million. But you would solve the problem not only for today, but for the future. And you could be the shining star in the United States instead of another Flint.
We are, Jack, I just wanted to give an update. So we have been working with Senator Brady's office on some earmarks for our commission. We have requested $50,000 in an earmark for continued water quality. So the idea being that when this project wraps up with the water quality monitoring at Silver Lake, we can then narrow down a scope for annual water quality monitoring that can help us further answer some of the questions that I'm sure more of which are going to come up. We're also working with Senator Brady's office to get another earmark specifically to study water resiliency in the district's area. So that would look at a lot of the issues that Pine was just talking about. I think we originally requested 150,000. It looks like perhaps we might be able to request more. So there's potentially opportunity around that. So I have been in touch with Senator Brady's office trying to work those earmarks in, and he has asked the commission to submit a letter to the chair of the Senate Ways and Means to kind of describe the work of the commission, our needs, our successes to date, that sort of thing. So I'll be pulling that together as well for us to do. So we are trying to get resources through the earmark process, which we've been pretty successful with over the past couple of years, but you never know ever until it's signed on paper. And even then, until you get the check, you still can't be sure. But ARPA, I think, is definitely an opportunity. It's difficult, I think, for the commission to work at the individual local level, which is maybe where watershed associations, I'm sure, are working anyway, and trying to encourage the use of local ARPA money to be spent on local water infrastructure, and in some cases, multi-jurisdictional and regional needs. But there are going to be more grant opportunities coming through the state as well. So for watershed associations that are interested in collaborating with this commission, I'm sure we'd definitely be interested in doing that, because our remit really isn't just the Silver Lake water system, it's the whole district. There is a map on our website, but it stretches over 7 or 8 communities that have all kinds of water quality, water protection needs, treatment infrastructure issues. So we can be looking at that sort of thing moving forward as well. So any and all suggestions. Any and all suggestions are always welcome, but the water supply issue is a priority for us.
Right. Samantha, I have, go right ahead.
So I think, I just want to reiterate a little bit about, it's not just the Jones River that's impacted, although that's the most severely impacted. It's certainly water being taken from these other watersheds. And it's not even just that. There's certainly other water supply issues. We know that it's really a big issue on the South Shore, and it's impeding, I think, some other agendas that may not be ours, but, in terms of development. And it seems like what we need is a way to come together. We have this opportunity, perhaps, with the infrastructure bill to solve some of these problems and correct them for the environment at the same time that we're going to hopefully secure the future of the water supplies for the people of the area in a different way than we have in the past, in a way that would hopefully support all the needs of people and wildlife to live here, not just, in Kingston, but throughout the South Shore and all of these areas that are impacted. So I really feel like there's one of the challenges of our area is that we don't have a common regional entity. Maybe this is it. That's what I think we're all hoping, is that somehow we can work with you to lead the charge and bring some of these other regional entities that touch our area or use the resources so that we can kind of figure out how can we implement something and do it quickly enough that we could take advantage of these resources that are going to be coming that may only be this one time. So I don't know if 150 is enough to get us to a position or a pathway that is consensus, because that's what has to happen. We have to have some political consensus about what the pathway will be forward. And certainly we need the city of Brockton to be part of that discussion. We need all of the different communities that are benefiting from these and or not benefiting from this, the way the water is being used, and towns that could benefit. Hingham has been discussed. I'm also a board member of the Weir River watershed. We have a river there that runs dry because of water withdrawals. In 2020, it ran dry from July 23rd till November 15th. The entire mainstream of this river was dry because of water withdrawals in our watershed. I mean, it's just historic over withdrawal. It wasn't intentional. It's just that the way that it's grandfathered now. So is there a way for us, and yet they're up against their permit, and Situate, they're just
Mhm.
bonded $50 million to put a new treatment plant in to
Mhm.
continue to use surface waters that are draining a river dry. If there was another resource available, maybe they wouldn't need to do that. If MWRA was here and we had a better system.
Yeah.
So I really think we have to erase what we've done in the past and think differently, because the climate is changing. And depending upon these surface waters, I think is a really dicey proposition, frankly. But that's my 2 cents about it.
Thank you, Samantha. I just want to chime in too, that we're almost afraid that we're the entity that helps pull everything together, because we're only 3 volunteers that have full-time jobs, and we've actually had discussions about having enough money to have like an executive director that could kind of do a lot of the heavy lifting, but that's not happening immediately. But it's funny, I was listening to a podcast series they talk about a number of subjects, and they pointed out that nationally, water systems are the most fractured institution we have in many cases, where they're broken up by municipalities and they don't tie together very well. And it's always enlightening to read the legislation that created this commission, because it looks like the legislature was thinking ahead towards something like the MWRA, but it also explicitly includes both water supply for human beings, but also the recreational values and the inherent properties of the reservoirs should be preserved, which we now interpret as both being recreation and ecological services. And so somewhere out of that might be a way to tie things together. But it's tough with 3 volunteers. So to your point too, I don't think $150,000 even starts to do just the engineering that Pine's talking about. We need a lot more than that. I'm just involving, I mean, for some people, the MWRA, the acronym is a dirty word, but boy, with hindsight, it's been very successful in tying together a large region that had separate water systems in an ecologically responsible way. At least that's what I see. And I kind of wonder whether we start building off of that in the South Shore to rationalize the water systems, but also bring back and restore the river watersheds, and so that we're not having these withdrawals that go from one watershed to another. It's just crazy. So I'm kind of rambling, but I don't know. I think what I'm trying to do is trigger a thought so that the next meeting we have some concrete ideas on what we can do about this.
So I'm not really that familiar with your organization. I mean, I've read a little bit about it, and so you don't have any staff, full-time staff.
Looking at our part-time contract staff, the county provides right now.
Right, because I think part of what, I think you're right, part of what is needed is some dedicated person who is a professional who can bring the parties together.
Yes.
I don't know if it needs to be full-time, but somehow needs to be able to get everybody in the same room to talk about these issues in a way that hopefully will get to some kind of consensus with support, engineering support. I mean, I don't know, as Pine has said, certainly she's got some plans, but the problem is they're not getting implemented because they don't have consensus built into them. Is that my?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
So until we get
Jack,
there.
if I may.
Oh, go ahead, Joanne.
I'd also I'd encourage watershed associations, and some of you may already be doing this as well, to reach out to regional planning agencies. So I do work for Old Colony Planning Council. SERPED was mentioned on this meeting earlier. There's also the MAPC, which does the greater Boston area. But regional planning agencies were formulated really for issues like these. And most of them, in the case of mine, for example, every municipality has representation on our governing council. And if those delegates and alternates come to meetings and start saying, this is an issue for our community, we need to work on this regionally, then the council together takes it up and formulates a way to kind of make that a priority for the planning agency at the regional level. Similarly with chambers of commerce, so the South Shore Chamber of Commerce, Pine, I know that you saw the work that they recently did looking at economic development. Sam, I'm sure you were probably involved in that as well too, because it's kind of in your neck of the woods a little bit. I think they did some stuff in Hanson, but the chambers of commerce are really advanced in their thinking on water as well too. But in some cases, and I think we've got about 4 that span our district here. They don't often have very much in terms of resources either, but they certainly have influence and access to organizations and foundations and businesses, and could potentially raise money through their foundation arms too. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for collaboration. I think what we've been wrestling, as Jack says, is how do we as a volunteer group make that happen if there's not a regional player, another regional player that will at the moment.
If I could, Chair, one of the challenges is that the Plymouth County area is broken into 3 regional planning, as you mentioned out. And unfortunately, this is a statutory group that CPCWDC is a statutorily created with a very narrow definition of these 8 towns and cities. So, you know, if we were all within OCPC, or were all within, SERBRP or any of them, it would be a lot easier. Now you're getting 3 regional agencies to work together. The county doesn't look to natural resources. We have very thin staff too. So, you know, that's one of the challenges is the way the county is broken up between agencies.
That's the issue, is that we just have so many independent groups that aren't cohesive regionally. We do have one entity though that is cohesive regionally, that has plenty of full-time people and responsibility for water supply and wetlands ecological services, and that's the state DEP Southeast region. I think it pretty much hits all these areas, and that's the challenge. It would be fabulous if we could get the state to make this put together an executive office of somebody in the Southeast region whose job it was to coordinate us and push for these sorts of things. Something worth talking to somebody about at the State House. It's already there. It may not be the ideal agency to do it, but certainly has the talent.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm sure they're going to come back and say they're under-resourced, so you probably have to take it above their head.
Well, exactly. Well, that's
budget.
where we go to our state reps and senators and say, you need to fund the staff to do this. I mean, that might be the quickest way to get to it. Pine, you're dying to say something. So if Kimberly, if you're done.
Before I give up my
Go right ahead,
soapbox and the fact that I have to go clear a stream, I guess I would, DP wouldn't be first on my list to ask for help, because they've actually been a big part of the problem.
They have a lot of red tape as well.
Yeah, so I guess if I understand you correctly, your statutory regulation actually does have a balance between the environment and the water supply issue.
Yeah,
and you cover, albeit not the entirety of the areas that we might want to draw into this discussion. You're at the point of it, and you cover the most.
Where the watersheds join. Yes.
I think if we're going to solve the problem, we probably need to start here and get others to come with us to. Because that is not their mission. The chamber's mission is not to solve the water problem for the fish. They might be for the people and for their business community, which is, certainly all good, but that's not their mission. They would come to us because we might come to them with a solution. So I think if we could figure out how we could get people together in a way that, some kind of a system that would start to address this issue on a regular basis, then I think that I don't see these other, I certainly have a great deal of respect for the regional planning agencies, but as Fred pointed out, they're just jurisdictionally not overseeing the areas that we would need to. And maybe one or two of them could come in and help us. I certainly would be happy to have them, but I think we would have to at least ask, we being an entity like you with maybe a group like us and those on the phone, a letter saying, here's the problem, here's what we think are some of the ways we could move forward, and construct an institution, some kind of committee that would begin to really look at the solutions to the problems, and then, you know, get the money to hire professionals to do that with us. I mean, similar to what you're doing now with the water quality work, I think, you know, it's good. But as I think we've already noticed, it'll probably provide you a lot of questions.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm a
it's-
scientist, I get it, but we have a lot of science already.
Well, this
What
point's
we
been
need
made,
is
yeah.
political will and solutions.
Yeah.
And that requires people being involved at the table and the right people at the table to be able to make the decisions, and being provided the right information so that they can make good decisions. And that means both the science, but also the financial implications are clearly a driver and need to be part of the discussion. So I don't know exactly what the solution is, besides saying that I think if we aren't the genesis of it, I don't think it would happen. We being perhaps us with you, because you have a mission like us that wants to balance these things. The other groups, I don't think will have the bandwidth nor the mission to accomplish it. They would perhaps have an interest in being a stakeholder in the discussion, and should sit at the table. But they
Thank you.
probably want us to invite them. So, yeah.
Thanks, Samantha. Yeah, point well taken. So
Thank you for
you're gonna
joining
do
us.
some real work. That's great. You can see my attempt to deflect this from us has totally failed. So, I mean, that's what it comes down to. That's why I've been, thinking about this too. I work in engineering, and the thing about in our business is people that do tasks, but ultimately there's somebody who's a project manager or vice president or something whose paycheck and continued employment depends on getting something done successfully. And what your point is well taken, is that we have a lot of groups that have different interests, that have a limited ability to do much, but also, Chamber of Commerce, I'm sure they do great things, but I grew up in the South Shore. I don't want to see it totally filled with apartment buildings, which apparently the Chamber of Commerce wants to do.
Well, you'd be surprised depending on which chamber you talk to.
I know, but I'm just as an example. Whereas if there's someone whose job and mission is to bring water supplies, sustainable water supplies to the population, without and respecting the environment, that's the entity we want to have. We just don't really have that, except maybe us.
Maybe we need to expand the statutory language of your organization.
We've talked about revising our
Yeah.
charge, if you will, before.
More broader, and then assign.
Sorry.
You got to go too.
Yeah, and then assign a budget that
Correct, yeah.
allows you to have a paid staff person who would be able to really lead the charge
Right.
in this way. So I think coming up with, that might be, you certainly would have our support to get it through the legislature. I don't know
Appreciate
if
that.
we'd get enough to support, but we could try.
It's worth the thought. Keep the ideas coming. Pine, you have something to say?
I do. I believe that you have all the authority you need. I believe you have the budget to hire somebody to coordinate the effort. I believe you have the problem that is central to the issue. And I believe you have the capacity and the interest to solve it. So I just would ask that you extend the use of your budget to, I don't know, maybe you could convince Kim, she's perfectly qualified.
We'd love to.
To begin to address this. We, speaking for all my brothers and sisters in the watershed groups, would certainly work with anybody to help conceive the plan and organize and recruit people. But I think that we need, someone to help organize a series of meetings that would engage, and nobody would want us not go, you know what I mean? Engage it in such a way. I can't as a watershed association invite people to a meeting that they wouldn't not want to go to, you know what I mean? But you can, the chamber can, Metro West can, Brockton can even, right? But it has to be the broad scope. And if you do the broad scope, you're meeting your mission and you're solving an enormous problem. You're solving the problem you were set up to solve. And you do have a budget. I don't have a budget. If I had a budget, it'd be done. What I'm stuck with is if somebody doesn't start solving the problem, I'm left with court. And you know what a waste of money court is? You know how much help that would be to solving our problem? And that's the only thing that keeps me out of court. And the hope that you will take this next step to begin organizing us. And I think it can be done. And I don't think it's, I don't think it's a full-time job. I think it's a focused job, organizing people, and that it will grow itself. And with Mike Brady right behind you all the way, I think you have the support you need in the legislature, and we can build that as well. So I implore you to take that step.
Thank you, Pine. I see we've lost some of the online visitors, so and I think we're pretty close to wrapping up our agenda. So, oh, Bob, go ahead. Come on, go ahead. Yep.
I support 100% what Pine's saying. But we're looking at long-term solutions to problems that exist right now. And I am kind of a novice to a lot of this that's going on, but I've read it as much as I can. And it's the difficulty is absorbing it and knowing what it means. But I understand from reading what I've read that the city of Brockton has a cap on how much water they're supposed to take out of Silver Lake, and that they exceed that cap on a regular basis.
Hello.
Someone's saying no, someone's
No,
saying
they don't.
yes.
No, they're always within their allowable amount. It's just a very big allowable amount.
I guess maybe the question then becomes, is that big amount really a rational amount or a reasonable amount to take out of the watershed?
No, but it's grandfathered in, so it's a state issue. Basically, is it the DEP that deals with that?
Water
or
registration? Is that
the water registrations?
Water registration that was fraudulently done in 1989, yes.
Yeah, so
You just get out if you want to.
so the only way, so at the moment, the state hasn't really tackled
Use one of those.
grandfathered. The state hasn't really tackled any grandfathered water rights. So that's kind of a,
I think a short-term solution is to tackle that problem
Yeah.
while we're addressing all these other problems simultaneously. And, going back to how much water they're taking out of the plant that's there for them to use. One of the articles I read, the reason they don't use the water is because they have to pay for that water.
they do.
It costs more than taking the water from
Well,
other sources.
if we could bring down the amount that they can take to a rational level and then say to them, if you exceed this level, you have to pay twice as much as the plant. And they can do 10 million gallons a day from the plant that they're not doing.
So they can't do that much either. So the plant was built to support 4 million gallons a day. It, as far as I know, and please correct me if anybody knows better, it's never actually even reached that amount. So there's question mark as to whether it actually can functionally deliver the 4 million that was promised.
It said it's at 2 million gallons, but it can go up to 10 million gallons. Maybe the article's wrong, but
The article might be wrong.
The article might be wrong. It's built for 4. It can be doubled if they put a lot of money into it to increase its capacity.
I mean, again, that's a short-term solution, I think.
But I hear what you mean. Yeah, you're saying use aquarium more to lessen the burden on Silver Lake. Absolutely.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, this is we appreciate that. It's something early in the commission's history before anyone here except Pine was on and I was on, there was a lot of debate about this sort of thing. We've pretty much decided it hasn't been very productive We'd be better off looking for a overall solution that works for everybody. Brockton could do more, but they have their own limitations too.
Right. We all have, it's so much money in every bucket and
And
you have a lot of, you need a lot of for. I understand that, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, it's having a long-term effect.
oh, it
if we don't
is.
correct it.
It is. It already has had a
Brockton will suffer as well as everybody else.
Yeah,
Well,
and
that's the ultimate issue is that if we have a major issue with, I mean, one thing that's often not brought up, I bring up all the time being in engineering is that the infrastructure is very old. It can fail and they may get no water from Silver Lake for a while. That'd be a big problem. So it's in everybody's interest to come up with an overall solution that works for all interests is what.
And
agree.
Brockton, under the current administration with Mayor Sullivan, has actually been very supportive of our work. He's had several meetings with us. He's told us that he's willing to work with us. So has the DPW commissioner who recently changed. I think what everybody's waiting for happen is for somebody to really take the lead on it and present a solution, a funded solution. That's really the big barrier. There are a lot of competing priorities in Brockton for the use of funds. And currently there is again in the city a discussion around Aquaria and whether the city should buy it, not buy it, try and sell some of the water to other communities so that they're able to use more of it themselves. Everybody's got a different take on it. And part of, why we've spent so much time talking about this idea of doing a study of supply options and the best resilient solution for this district is to kind of help put people on the same page. Because some people refer to MWRA and they give you the most ridiculous figures for how much it would cost. And they'll say, I have to go under this and under that and over this. And then you speak to somebody else and they basically say, oh no, you can just do it through Stoughton. It'll be super cheap. So nobody's really on the same page about anything. And if you do look at the research and the documentation, there's not really any very detailed analysis of the various costs and benefits for these options. Nobody's actually sat down and looked at, okay, if we connect to MWRA via the development that's happening at the former naval station, how much is that going to cost for the city of Brockton? And then compare it to the cost of upgrading Aquaria, for example, to double its capacity and reduce Silver Lake stress. The other concern, and my overarching concern, if we're talking about the long term, is that water isn't an infinite resource at the local level. And Brockton is not the only community that's struggling. There are communities abutting Brockton who want to hook into Brockton's water supply. There are, communities out in like Situate and Hingham that have their own water supply issues. All of this linked to the need for housing and economic development and job creation. But very few people are actually talking about the need to actually start looking at managing demand too. Even if we all hook up into MWRA isn't going to infinitely be able to supply all of our communities on the South Shore. So it's looking at that sort of resilient infrastructure too. We've talked about the city of Brockton, for example, during the summer, not having water bans in place when every single other community around us does. That's a very basic thing to address. So it's really complex, but I think working with the watershed associations is a huge step forward to do anything. And the more that we can figure this out together, I think the better off we're going to be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
So a while ago, Pine had mentioned the idea of making use of the infrastructure funding as a mechanism. Potentially that it would have the resources or a source to be able to provide the resources to actually solve this. What have no idea about, it would seem like, are the timelines that are involved in that. And the need, it would seem like, for both short-term funding to be able to get the ideas and thoughts together into a coherent plan, and then a need for funding for that, actually implementing that long-term plan. And I don't know the constraints at all around that infrastructure funding. And so I don't know what kind of timeline would be involved in actually being able to handle the short-term setup of getting someone involved, getting the players to the table, getting a coherent plan together, such that you could then get funding longer term to actually implement. And I put that out there as a question. I don't know if if you have the answers to that, but it would seem like putting thought into how to meet that timeline might help crystallize action and planning on getting a coherent approach.
That's a good suggestion.
Any other discussion? It's right, we're coming close to 2:00. Hoping to adjourn soon. Joanne?
No, I think this has been a great start.
Yeah, no, I think this is very useful. Thank you very much, those who attended. I wish I could have thanked those who left, but that's great. Frank?
Just Chair, next meeting date. We should set that before we.
Oh, of course, yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, do we have any other business that we didn't anticipate? I do not.
Yes, I had just one question. So following our last meeting, we had said that we wanted to invite relevant municipalities, Patrick Hill, the DPW Commissioner in Brockton, and Jonathan Hobel. I'm sorry, I keep Hubble. I keep
Hobel at the
mispronouncing.
DEP? Yeah,
Yeah, at the DEP to discuss the request that we had from Halifax for an MOU about requests for diversions during flooding
Storms, yeah.
situations. So I don't know if we want to go ahead and do that and tackle that MOU, which should be relatively straightforward since it's just writing down what is kind of understood.
Mhm.
There was also some discussion about inviting the mayor as well, but I don't think we should do both those things at the same meeting.
Correct. Yeah, I agree. Well, is anyone volunteering to write the draft MOU?
I'm happy to write the draft MOU, sure. So should we invite those folks? And
Yeah, let's
I
do
was
that.
thinking, now, do you think I should draft it and invite them to discuss it? Or do you think we should invite them to discuss it and then I draft it? I kind of feel the latter is a better approach because there seems to be a lot of misinterpretation.
That makes sense, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Super. So I'll work with Frank and Nancy to reach out to folks and invite them along. So for that meeting, would we like to do it via Zoom or would we like to try and host it in Brockton? I'm not sure if Jonathan is going to be able to come in person, if it's easier for him to Zoom. No, I don't know where he's based. Do you know?
I think he works out of the Lakeville office in
Oh,
DEP.
okay. So
he's
Brockton
not-
should be relatively convenient.
Yep. I may have to come in by Zoom. It depends on what's going on, but
Okay.
It's nice to meet in person, but
Okay. Should we try and do it in person?
I'd say let's try it in person at the county offices in Brockton.
Would that be okay?
That works. That's convenient for you. It's not too bad for me.
We'll extend an invite to Mr. Hubble and Patrick, Mr. Hill.
Patrick Hill.
Great. And I can put a couple sentences together, Frank, as to what we want to talk about specifically, kind of.
Okay. Thank you.
So it'll still be at 12 noon and I didn't bring my phone with me. It's in the car. What's the date?
Good
Tuesday,
question.
the 31st is the last Tuesday of the month,
Tuesday the 30th.
which is when the next, on the calendar, when the next time we'd meet.
Okay.
See if I'm already booked. Oh, I'm good.
And are days still best for you, Jack, or would evenings be easier?
Haven't thought that far ahead yet.
Okay. 'Cause one of
It's
the things-
everything. It's right now, days are fine.
Okay, because I think Mark is having some issues with days. So maybe when he's on our next meeting, we can
Yeah.
see if evenings would be better for everyone.
Yeah, I think
I'm
we're
kind of
gonna,
both. For me, they're equally challenging sometimes. So
it's funny. I don't have as many meetings at night as I often do, but whenever we try to schedule one,
there's one
it
there.
always nails it
Yep.
without fail. I did 3 meetings in separate locations in one night once, but I don't think I'll ever do that again.
Yeah, that's been fun. All right.
Can't afford the speeding tickets.
So that was it. That's all I had.
Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Joanne, I.
Jack, aye. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.